Hello, and welcome to the lecture in regards to reliability and validity. So you guys have experience with writing surveys, obviously gathering information from them, but today we're going to talk about kind of the nitty-gritty, oh God, excuse me, the nitty-gritty behind surveys. So just as a quick exercise, obviously you guys don't have to get into groups, but I'm going to write a 5-item self-report measure on a certain construct. And we're going to be discussing this as we continue forward with the concepts of reliability and validity. But let's get started with writing the damn thing. So I'm going to choose, it's not necessarily on here explicitly, but I'm going to go with, you can think of it as a personality trait of perseverance. Perseverance is essentially, you're going through tough times, or just you have a lot of shit on your plate. Perseverance is your ability to continue to push forward, to get things done, to live and breathe each and every day. I feel like perseverance is a pretty good construct considering the current sitch. But anyway, so my construct is perseverance, and now I'm going to write 5 questions or statements, as I like to do, in regards to them. So I'm going to start with my Likert scale. My Likert scale is going to be 1 to 5 as per usual, 1 to 5, where 1 is strongly disagree, and 5, oh, excuse me, oh my God, and 1 is strongly agree. Makes it easier to just have my scale in mind before I get cracking with the rest of the stuff. So, excuse me. In terms of perseverance, it's about, the conceptual definition of it. The textbook definition is, continuing to push forward when things are difficult, in a nutshell, in a relatively easy nutshell. So part of perseverance could just be finishing what you started, be it an assignment or, excuse me, a degree, or, it can be minor, where it's like the short term, like finishing laundry or finishing this assignment that I started yesterday. And it could be long term, like getting your degree or something like that. So I'm going to start my statements of number 1 is, I have that scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. So I'm going to write them in a sense that works with those statements, with that Likert scale. So I'm going to say I tend, excuse me, to finish what I start. Okay. Second statement is going to be, well, part of perseverance is continuing on when things are difficult. So I think I'm just going to work with that. So I push forward during difficult times. Another thing is, I try to do something productive each day. Part of pushing through difficult times is maybe keeping yourself on some sort of schedule, even if it's something minor, like, oh, I had a pile of clean laundry and I just put them away today. So I'm going to have, I try to do something productive each day. Finally, I want to, well, I have 2 more questions, but I want to include a reverse scored item, meaning that, if I'm strongly agreeing to, I tend to finish what I start, I push forward during difficult times, I try to do something productive each day. Indicating that I strongly agree with those statements is indicating that I have higher levels of perseverance. But now I want to do one where if I strongly agree with the statement, it actually indicates lower levels of perseverance. So maybe maybe I can say something like, I get easily discouraged. If I respond highly to that, that's actually where, if I respond strongly agree, a 5 or a 4 being higher in my Likert scale, that's actually indicating lower levels of perseverance, hence the term reverse coded or reverse scored. So I'm going to go with, I get easily discouraged. And then lastly, I mentioned this earlier, actually, You know, a lot of you guys are working on earning your degrees, be that a bachelor's or maybe a master's or even PhD down the road. But I want to have a statement that's, you know, I intend to get my degree. I intend to earn my degree. Okay. So the statements I have, all of these are on a 1 to 5 Likert scale, of 1 being strongly disagree and 5 is being strongly agree. Number 1 is this is in regards to perseverance, that's my construct. 1 is I tend to finish what I start. 2, I push forward during difficult time. Oh my God, my voice is dying on me. 2, I tend to push forward during difficult times. 3, I try to do something productive each day. 4, the reverse coded item, I get easily discouraged. And lastly, I intend to earn my bachelor's degree. My God. Okay. Hopefully my voice isn't crap out of me. So I'm just going to start with my self-report measure. And so here it is. It's kind of hard to see. But I have my questions, my scale at the top. Okay. Now, general principles for writing self-report items, self-report surveys, is that you want to clearly identify the construct of interest. What is it that you're measuring? I wrote 5 statements or 5, items for my questionnaire, for my scale, and I'm measuring perseverance. So all these questions, I want to make sure that they are addressing those. I want to use multiple items. I don't want to just ask, and 5 is actually pretty short survey, but just for the sake of, speed, I didn't want to make like a 20 question survey, which I'd be more comfortable with. But for the sake of simplicity and, not having this video go into like 2 hours, you want to use multiple items. You don't want to just ask one question, do you have perseverance, yes or no? Because there's a lot of different facets, not just to perseverance, but any construct that you're measuring. It's a lot more nuanced than just, are you depressed, yes or no? Or, do you have anxiety, or, whatever. Are you confident? Yeah, it depends. A lot of times the question, if you ask a question just straight up like that, are you depressed? Your answer is like, well, sometimes, or yeah, no, not at all, but it's always like, yes, but, there's more to it than that. So that's why we tend to use multiple items to get to those things that are more to it. We want to use 1 or more reverse scored items. And I did that with I can get easily discouraged. You want to get a mix of, this is a survey on perseverance. You want to get a mix of both things that do constitute perseverance and things that don't. And we'll get into that when we talk about validity, the different aspects of validity, and why reverse scored items are also important. It actually adheres to one of the types of validity that we'll be dealing with. And then you want to use a consistent response format that matches our items. So, we want to start, that's why I like to start with the scale first and have my items fit to that. I started with my 1 to 5 Likert scale of 1 strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree. And then as I wrote my items out, I wrote them in a sense that, strongly disagree or strongly agree would make sense. That would be an appropriate response to those statements. So not necessarily easy. It's not like we can just pull a survey out of our ass and say, yep, this will do it. This is going to measure perseverance perfectly. I'm sure that my perseverance measure isn't perfect. I'm positive that it's not perfect. Like, come on. It might be measuring things I'm not really intending to, or not really getting at the heart of perseverance like I want to. But it requires, in order for surveys to measure what we want on a consistent basis, it actually requires careful creation. So it takes longer than the 2 minutes it took me to get that together. It requires a lot of research, empirical evaluation, testing it, how good is it? And we're going to get into the different aspects of survey writing, just, things we need to have for a good survey. So one thing that we do in psychology is, we're measuring variables, be that perseverance, or, think about the variables you guys have for your studies, for your final projects. We're measuring something, and we're trying to look at relationships between them. We're trying to look at causational relationships, correlational. We're looking at how variables relate to one another. So part of the importance that it seems like it should go without being said, but it has to be said. We're measuring variables. We want to make sure that when we're actually measuring them by writing a survey about them or observing stuff or obtaining a physiological measure of a variable, we want to make sure that whatever we're choosing to do, however we're measuring it, is accurate and consistent. If we say we're measuring perseverance, we want to make sure we're measuring perseverance. And we want to make sure that if we measure it today and use the same measure in 2 weeks from now, it's still going to be consistent. It's going to measure perseverance just like we intend it to. So a lot of peer-reviewed, if not all peer-reviewed surveys that you'll find in studies or, more popularized ones, they have gone through rigorous verification to ensure that they're measuring what they want to measure. So we have the Beck Depression Inventory. There's a series of statements that you respond to, and it measures depression. The Recovery Assessment Scale, looking into stress. There's all these different measures that, the Big Five personality scale, the Big Five of, openness to new experience and conscientiousness and agreeableness and extroversion and neuroticism. There's a reason why we use these consistently and reliably. I give you this questionnaire on your personality in terms of those 5 traits. I trust that questionnaire to tell me what it is I want to know, how you score on these traits, and I can give this survey to this class, and then my next semester, and then my next semester, and I'm going to be confident that it continues to measure those 5 big personality traits moving forward. So anytime we have a new scale, a new survey that's intending to be used, they go through verification. So when we have this idea, I have a perseverance scale, it's fine if I write it and I use it, in a research class, kind of on a more local basis. But if I want to publish, if I want to, create a perseverance scale myself, and I want to use that scale to measure perseverance and look at its relationship with other variables, and I intend to send it to a peer-reviewed journal, one thing that peer-reviewed journal is going to want to know is, hey, how reliable, how good is that perseverance scale that you created? It's one thing if you have used one that someone else has tested for reliability and validity, but you haven't. So we need to make sure that you have tested for that. And they are tested, these new measures are tested on, like I said, reliability and validity. So reliability is our observations answered consistently. Like I mentioned, if I was going to give you guys a Big Five personality test, which has been tested for reliability and validity, if I give it to this class and then I give it to next semester and next semester, just over time, are those observations going to be consistent? Are they going to provide the same kind of relative information as before? Validity is, okay, so you're saying that you're measuring, openness to new experience or neuroticism, or like you say you're measuring perseverance, like I just wrote a few slides ago. Are you sure it's measuring perseverance? Are you positive that the statements that you have on this survey are actually measuring perseverance? Or is it measuring something else entirely? You can have all the best intentions in the world to write a survey in regards to perseverance or confidence or anything. But push comes to shove, it might not be as reliable as you think it is. It might not be as valid as you think it is. So we're going to start with going into the different things of reliability. So again, this is just how consistent are our measures. If you get confused about reliability and validity, one thing I like to think of in terms of reliability is think about a really good friend that you have, or someone that you depend on or rely on. If you ask them, hey, can you help me move, or can you take me to the airport, or I need your help picking something out at a store or whatever, a reliable friend is one person who you consistently depend on or can depend on to help you out. you know, oh, can you help me move? Oh, I'm busy this weekend, but hey, you know, I'm sorry I can't help you, but hey, I got your back next time. I mean, that doesn't sound reliable, but you know, we're human beings. We can't be at each other's beck and call at all times. But ultimately, you can talk to them if you're going through a hard time, and you know consistently throughout the course of your friendship, they've been there for you. That's a reliable friend that you have. Same thing with surveys. You know, we can give this questionnaire, this survey on multiple different occasions, and over the course of time, we are consistently measuring reliability, or we are consistently measuring something. It's pretty much the same over the course of time. So there are different measures of reliability. There are different types of reliability that we'll be getting into, but here are some of the most common ones that we'll be discussing in class. We have test-retest reliability, parallel forms reliability, internal consistency, and inter-rater reliability. So let's start with test-retest reliability. So this is where we are essentially giving the same test twice. So we give our 5-question perseverance scale that we wrote today, and then we give it again 2 weeks from now, you know, on next, you know, 2 weeks from Tuesday or whatever. We're going to give it over the course of time, give it to the same people. And if it's reliable, we should see that the scores are fairly similar. You know, if perseverance might not be something that changes a whole lot. So when I give it to a group of people today, and then the same group of people 2 weeks from now, there shouldn't be much of a change in terms of the reliability, in terms of their scores. They might change a little bit, but you know, that could just be the day they're having. Maybe they wake up and they feel super confident, or the day before they did a whole bunch of stuff around the house, so they're feeling pretty perseverance-y. But for the most part, if it's a reliable measure of perseverance, and I'm using test-retest reliability, those scores should be fairly similar to each other. So we check the correlation of test-retest reliability by just seeing how those two scores correlate with one another. We're measuring Pearson's R between the first time these 30 people take our perseverance scale and the second time those same 30 people, or however many, take that perseverance scale. In general, if you have an R of 0.8, that's pretty good. That has good test-retest reliability. But of course, that can change. Oh my God. That can change depending on what your construct is. Now, something like personality traits, those tend to be fairly consistent over time, and that doesn't really change on a week-to-week basis. You know, if you're an extroverted person, you tend to be an extroverted person for the course of your life, with some exceptions, but for the most part. But if I'm going to give you a questionnaire or a survey on mood, let's say, mood is something that changes on a daily basis. You know, sometimes you're having a pretty good day, then you have a bad day, but your mood or your emotions throughout the course of just a single day change a lot. So if I were to test the reliability of emotions, then test-retest might not be the best thing, because over time, you know, the first time I give you a survey on, you know, your mood or your emotions at this time, and the second time I give you a survey, the same survey 2 weeks later, you can be in a completely different place. Maybe the first time you know, traffic was good, you got here, you weren't frustrated, you know, things are good. So boom, I plop this survey in front of you. You're like, oh yeah, my emotions are good. I'm having a good day, da 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 da. But then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, okay, I need you to come back so you can retake that test again. I'm testing for its reliability. That time you run into traffic, you stub your toe, they get your order wrong at Starbucks. It's just one of those days where everything seems to go wrong. Well, and that happens. That's pretty par for the course. Obviously, we hope for less days like the latter and more days like the former, but ultimately it happens. We have that influx of days where sometimes nothing goes right and sometimes everything seems to go right. So measuring mood with test-retest reliability, it's hard to tell if our survey is reliable, if there's correlation, or it could be have a really weak test-retest correlation, not because of any fault of our survey, but it could just be because mood is something that changes a lot. So to test it over time and expect the same results. It's essentially saying you're going to have the same exact day today as you did 2 weeks ago. It's kind of hard to pinpoint that. So another thing that could take into account that kind of goes with the inconsistency of the construct itself could just be the time between the tests. And like I said, sometimes the day is different. You walk in on the first time you take it, it's a good day. Second time you take it, it's a bad day. Maybe during the time between tests, if I'm going to be measuring, perseverance, maybe you have within the 2-week span that just happened, maybe something really big happened in your life. Maybe someone passed away, or maybe you got married, or I don't know, just that whatever happened between the time you took these 2 tests, that could influence how you respond to them. It has nothing to do with the perseverance test. It's just the time that's passed between the 2 times you've taken this test. That's changed your results. That's changed how you've responded. So the point of this is that while test-retest reliability can be useful, if you don't get that high reliability, sometimes you have that high correlation between the 2 times. You kind of have to think, well, is it because of my construct or is it like because of the way I've written it? Is it not consistent? Or is it, the time between the tests? Is it, just the construct itself doesn't really lend to, being consistent over time? Those are things you have to keep in mind. Next is parallel forms reliability. So whereas test-retest reliability is taking your same survey twice at 2 different points in time, parallel forms is basically writing 2 surveys on perseverance with different questions. And we want to see how those 2 responses to those 5, 10, however long your survey is, how those 2 separate forms, how well they correlate with each other. So I create it says 10-item form here, but let's just stick with my 5 items here. I create a 5-item form on perseverance. That'll be form A. And then I create a second 5-item form on perseverance with completely different questions, but they are still relating to perseverance. So I administer them to the same group of people. So everyone's taking 2 of these tests to have that control participant serving as their own control. But I give every participant both tests, and I want to see how well those 2 tests with different questions correlate with each other. So that can be useful. However, the drawback is, of course, that you need to write twice as many questions. You need to basically write 2 separate surveys and see how well they relate to each other, how they correlate, what's the relationship between them. Internal consistency is where you look at one survey and you don't have to take it twice over the course of time like you do for test-retest. You don't have to make 2 separate surveys with different questions. No. Internal consistency, which I've seen as the most frequently used measure of reliability. Internal consistency is where you take your survey, however long it may be, mine is 5 questions, but 10, 20, 30, however long your survey is. And you want to see how that survey correlates with itself. So instead of seeing how 10 responses correlate with a different 10 questions on a completely separate survey, we take that 10 question survey, split it in half, and see how those halves correlate. So we can do, it's 10 questions, so 1 through 5, we're going to see how the responses correlate with 6 through 10. That's obviously just one way to split it. You can do all the even items, how they correlate with all the odd numbered items, 1, 5, 7, 12. Well, 12 wouldn't be 1, but you have numbers 1, 5, 7, 8, 10. See how they correlate with the other half. There's a lot of different combinations that you can have depending on how many items that you have. But essentially, you are splitting it in half, however you want to do that, and looking at how the 2 halves of your one survey correlate with one another. Now, with internal consistency, you can just do the first half and correlate with the second half. But there is a measure of internal consistency that is far more superior than just split half correlation. Again, split half is just taking, one set of half. No matter how you choose to split it in half, you're only doing it once. So 1 through 5, 6 through 10, that's all. Or, you know, all the evens, all the odds, that's all. Internal consistency with Cronbach's alpha, we measure it's far more superior than just taking one split half combination of first 5, last 5, even or odd. Cronbach's alpha is actually looking at every single possible combination of half. So it includes your 1 through 5, 6 through 10. It includes your even and odd, but it also takes that, you know, 1, 3, 5, 12, 10. What's with my obsession with 12? You know, 1, 3, 5, 8, and 9, and in comparison to the other half. And then 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9. You know, every single combination of how you can split it in half. That's what Cronbach's alpha is looking at. And so it's also a correlation. Again, this is still a measure of correlation in terms of how we're analyzing it, what we're doing with these halves of our survey. So when we have every single possible combination of halves, measure their correlation, and find the average of that, we have Cronbach's alpha. If we have 10 items, there are 252 possible ways you can split 10 items in half. So Cronbach's alpha is a correlation of all 252 of those split half correlations put into one number. So it's one thing to have a split half correlation of 0.8. Oh, that's pretty decent. But if you have every single possible combination of split halves and that's still at 0.8, hey, that's telling us a lot more. That's a hell of a lot more reliable. That has a pretty good measure of internal consistency. And you'll see here, there's a chart of Cronbach's alpha. This is the Greek letter alpha. It's kind of hard to tell. It kind of looks like an A, but it's an alpha, the Greek letter. You'll see kind of the threshold of strength of how good the internal consistency is in this chart here in regards to Cronbach's alpha. Again, every possible combination of split half correlations. But these are all measures of internal consistency. So you see something like Cronbach's alpha or split half correlation. These are both referring to the reliable measure or the type of reliability known as internal consistency. Inter-rater reliability, this isn't so much in regards to survey writing, but more so in regards to when you measure a variable through observation by looking at a behavior. And you want to make sure that your raters, the people that are observing the behavior and marking it down, you want to make sure they're all on the same page. What one person characterizes as a smile, you want the other person to also characterize as a smile, or whatever your behavior is that you're looking at. So inter-rater reliability is just referring to how pretty much on the same page with everything your observers are of a behavior, making sure that, you know, the person only smiled 3 times, everyone has 3 times across the board. Not one person has, 3, another person has 3, and one person has like 25. It's like, whoa, what the hell happened there? You want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So validity is something that is now not so much referring to the consistency of a measure, but now it's talking about how the score that we get from the survey, we take the composite score of all 10 questions, or we find the average, or we sum them, or whatever. That number that we get, how much does that really represent our construct? So if we score highly on our perseverance scale, on the 5 questions of perseverance, we score highly. Is that really telling us that we have high levels of perseverance? Does this survey that we've written measure what we think it does? Essentially, that is what validity boils down to. Do you really think you measured perseverance? Is that what this is measuring, or is it measuring something else? Now, there are 4 different dimensions of validity that we'll talk about. That is face validity, content validity, criterion validity, and then finally discriminant validity. I will tell you that criterion and discriminant validity are consistently flipped in terms of students, in terms of their understanding of the two. They are separate, and I'll get into detail about what those entail. But first, we'll start with face validity. So with face validity, it's essentially saying, does it look like it measures perseverance, or does it look like it measures depression, or whatever? So if I'm going to be measuring sadism, looking at this scale, I often get angry, I get pleasure in hurting small animals. I don't have pets for very long. I don't know all of the research available on sadism. I'm not an expert at it. But if I were to just look at it and say, yeah, that looks like it measures sadism. Same thing with my perseverance questionnaire, where I tend to finish what I start. I push forward during difficult times. I try to do something productive each day. I get easily discouraged, and I intend to earn my bachelor's degree. At face value, just looking at it, yeah, that looks like it measures perseverance. Now, if I were to take those same 5 questions of I tend to finish what I start all the way down to I intend to earn my bachelor's degree, and I say that my construct that I'm talking about is cooking ability, how well I'm able to cook dishes, that doesn't have anything to do with it. I feel like if I were going to measure cooking ability, I wouldn't be asking about earning my bachelor's degree or doing something productive each day. That doesn't really pertain to measuring cooking ability. So essentially, face validity is looking at the items of a survey, of a questionnaire, and saying, yep, that looks like it measures insert construct here, or determining if it seems to be measuring the construct. Now, content validity is more so based on the conceptual definition of the construct and how experts have determined it. So keep in mind that the conceptual definition, you can kind of think of that as the dictionary definition. What defines perseverance? What defines depression? But this isn't just, oh, I looked in Webster's dictionary and found this is what persistence or perseverance means, and now I'm rolling with it. It's a lot more complex than that. It's experts in the field that have measured perseverance, that have worked with experience of perseverance or depression or whatever construct it is you're looking at. They're the ones that determine content validity. If you're going to be measuring depression, you better make sure you have questions about, serotonin levels, or, well, that seems a little more physiological, but you better have questions in regards to different aspects of depression, not just, are you sad? But, maybe research in depression is saying a lot of stuff about, well, that not willing to get out of bed, that inconsistent sleep, either too much or too little. These all need to be involved. The sleeping cycle, the, desire to do the pleasure that you take in things that even you love. You need to make sure that if, experts have said, and by experts, I mean people who have researched this topic, who have, and not just researched, like looked on Google a few times and suddenly they're experts, but I mean peer-reviewed professionals, peer-reviewed researchers who have dug deep into this construct. They're the ones that are saying, well, after my 20 plus years of experience with measuring and dealing with depression, researching it, etc., looking into it, these are the things that need to be in a depression inventory or whatever. It's also based on theories surrounding the construct, which ties into how the experts that are determining what goes into the content validity, well, they're also researchers. They're dealing with the theories and the phenomena involved of these constructs. So if you are going to have content validity, you need to make sure that it's, measuring what you need to measure. Again, that's part of validity. But think about it like this. Whereas face validity, again, is you don't need to necessarily know all the theories and all the experts, not opinions, but all the experts' advice on what needs to be in there to be valid. Face is just face value. You don't have to be a professional or know everything about insert construct here to say, oh, yeah, face validity, you can be, just a random dude. Content validity. If I were to give you guys an exam, which I have, but if I were to give you guys an exam on research methods in psychology, what are some of the things, what's some of the content you'd expect to see? Well, you'd expect to see the difference between, quasi-experimental, correlational, and experimental design. So you'd expect to see some information on different research designs. You'd expect to see some information in terms of between and within subjects. You'd expect to see something in regards to, sample and populations. You'd expect to see that stuff in regards to content that you'd expect to see on a research methods class. Questions that would be completely out of left field would be if I were to ask you questions in relation to, what are some of the different things that contribute to depression? What are, the 7 factors that that are checked in the DSM that you need to exhibit to be diagnosed with clinical depression. That's not the class. That's still good information to know, but that would be more suited to like an exam on abnormal psychology, not research methods. So content validity is just, it's validity. So of course, are you measuring what you think this is measuring? You know, are you really giving me an exam on 144? Or are you giving me an exam on, I think, research, or like on Psych 66, on abnormal psych? I think that's the number. I forget now. My God, it's been so long. But, you know, am I taking a research methods test, or am I taking an abnormal psych class test? Because come on now. Criterion validity is variables you'd expect to be related to your construct are. So you can take, what are some things that could be related to perseverance? And this doesn't have to be a positive relationship either. Keep in mind that we're looking at the relationship that we're referring to as Pearson's R. So that can be a positive relationship of R, where as one goes up, the other tends to go up, or a negative relationship with Pearson's R. As one of your variables goes up, you'd expect the other to go down. So let's think about perseverance. You know, your ability to get things done, your ability to, you know, power through when things are difficult. You still, you know, keep your head up, essentially. You Tupac that shit. You know, what is some variables you'd expect there to be a relationship with perseverance? In the positive direction, maybe optimism. The more perseverance you tend to exhibit, you know, the more you get stuff done, the more you power through things, maybe the more optimistic people would tend to be as well. That seems to make sense to me. I'm not an expert on perseverance. I can't tell you all of what goes into a perseverance scale like I would with the experts with content validity. But in terms of just kind of thinking about it, you know, people who power through and get their stuff done, and, you know, even when times are difficult, they still get through. They might have not a perfect correlation. I'm not trying to say that every single person who has perseverance also has high levels of optimism. That would be causational. But just, I'd be willing to bet that probably people who are, you know, exhibit traits of perseverance might also tend to have high traits of optimism. So that would be a positive relationship, that if that is the case, and there is a high correlation between my perseverance questionnaire and another questionnaire on optimism, hopefully peer-reviewed as well. But at peer-reviewed, if I'm going to compare the scores of my 30 participants on perseverance, and then give those same 30 people a score, a survey on optimism, criterion validity would say, if I have good criterion validity in my perseverance study, the one that, or perseverance survey, the one I'm testing for reliability and validity, there should be a pretty good correlation between, pretty strong, or however that relationship is as determined by the experts. There should be a correlation between perseverance and optimism. Those two surveys that I've given, one, I'm testing my perseverance to see how good it is, and two, the optimism one, which has been tested, but I'm using that as a reliable and valid construct measure of optimism to compare to my survey that I'm testing. Good relationship, if there is a relationship, a positive Pearson's R between my survey and the already peer-reviewed optimism survey, cool, I have pretty good criterion validity. Variables that I'm expecting there to be a relationship with my variable, my perseverance, that's there. Now, this also goes in the negative direction, where negative relationships are just as valid in terms of criterion validity. So the more perseverance people tend to have, maybe the more they persevere through things, maybe the less, I don't know, regretful they are. Maybe the less, I don't want to say lazy, because you can persevere and still be lazy. But maybe we can also go in the opposite direction. The less perseverance you have, maybe the higher levels of depression people tend to exhibit. So lower levels of perseverance, higher levels of depression. That makes sense to me. just looking at my survey alone, I tend to finish what I start. I push forward through difficult times. I try to do something productive each day. These questions, people that have depression might not respond very highly on that. They might not try to do something productive each day, not because they don't want to per se, but just because I fucking can't. I cannot get out of this bed. I don't have the will to do it. I just can't today. So I would see the relationship between low levels of perseverance and high levels of depression. Or again, just to reverse that, but it's still a negative relationship, higher levels of perseverance and lower levels of depression. Either way, they're going in opposite directions, which characterizes a negative Pearson's-R relationship. So again, criterion validity, you think about variables that are related to yours. So perseverance, high levels of perseverance, I expect there to be probably higher levels of optimism with people. That would be a relationship that could make sense. Or, the more perseverance someone has, the lower levels of depressive symptoms they have. Just things that make sense, variables that should be related to yours, and see how they stack up. Again, that can go a positive or negative relationship in terms of comparing those two relationships. Now, discriminant validity, this is those variables you're looking at are unrelated whatsoever. So where criterion validity can be a positive relationship with perseverance and optimism going up, or a negative relationship with perseverance going up and depression going down, discriminant validity, no relationship. You expect unrelated variables should stay that way. So if you're writing a survey on perseverance and you want to test how valid it is, that should not have anything to do with, I don't know, maybe your cooking ability. There should not be a strong relationship between perseverance and cooking ability. I mean, there might be some, but it shouldn't be a very strong one. Or perseverance and shoe size. That really doesn't have much to do with anything. I love using shoe size as an example of discriminant validity because it normally just is. Your feet are the size they are, and that's just whatever. Doesn't really have much to do about your personality unless you base your personality around your feet, which, okay, you got some stuff going on that I don't really want to get into. But ultimately, we take having good discriminant validity is essentially saying our construct that we're measuring, perseverance has been the example we've been using. So the construct that we're measuring of perseverance, if it has good discriminant validity, it should not be related to things that perseverance is not related to. So we give our participants our perseverance questionnaire, and then we ask them their shoe size. And then if there's a strong correlation, if there's a strong relationship between shoe size and perseverance, we got to think, okay, what the hell did we do wrong? We got to go back to the drawing board. Or again, we give them our perseverance questionnaire, which we're testing for reliability and validity. And then we give them a cooking skill questionnaire, give them a survey based on their knowledge of cooking. I don't really see how those are related. They might be a small correlation, like R equals negative 0.18, or even maybe a slightly larger. But if there's a really strong correlation between those two things, I don't know. We don't really have good discriminant validity if we're getting big relationships, strong relationships with variables that perseverance is not related to. So here we go. Here's an example. So here's a little test question, or not an actual test question, but more so a question to test yourself. I know. So a robot that builds cars has built the same car 1,000 times with 95% accuracy. This robot would have high what when it comes to building the car? Would it be test, retest reliability, face validity, content validity, or face reliability? So you can go ahead and pause the video right now to think about it, because I'm going to I'm going to get into the answer right now. So this is talking about over the course of time, built the same car 1,000 times, and it has 95% accuracy. So keep in mind just the basic understanding of reliability and validity. Reliability is consistency, whereas Validity is measuring what you want to measure. So I'd say this is more this is more something in regards to consistency. This thing has built this car 1,000 times and it has 95% accuracy in building it the same way each time. So we know that it's some form of reliability, because face validity, does it look like a car? That's not what this is asking. Oh, does it have all the components of a car? That's not really what this is asking either. It's saying that it's built the same car with all the same parts 95% of the time. It's accurate, it's consistent over the thousands of times, well, the single 1,000 times that it has built this car. So we're looking at either A or D. Newsflash, D's not a thing. Face reliability isn't a thing. It's face validity. But it's retest reliability. So the answer is A. It has been tested over the course of time with the survey. Instead of participants taking our 5-question perseverance survey today and the next week or whatever, now the test is just building this car, constructing this car. And the 1,000 times is each retest of building this car. And this robot has built it with 95% accuracy. So that would be an example of good retest reliability. So a good, strong measure needs to have both reliability and validity. It doesn't do you much good if you say, oh, this measures perseverance. This is valid. It has good validity. It's going to measure perseverance. But it only measures it on a full moon in the month of October if you have eaten asparagus the night before. Like, what? That's not very consistent. It only works some of the time. 50% of the time it works never, or like whatever. I don't know. But you want to have both. You don't want to have it, oh, it measures perseverance really well, but not all the time. And you don't want it to be the other way. Oh, you're going to get consistent results, but it's not going to be about perseverance. It's going to be about other shit. But hey, it's reliable though. It doesn't do anything. So think about a scale. You want a reliable and valid bathroom body weight scale, or it could be in the bathroom, wherever you want to put it, it's up to you. But it's reliable if it produces similar results, consistent results, under similar circumstances. So if I'm gonna, weigh myself in the morning and then I weigh myself 20 minutes later and I haven't eaten anything, I'm just, the same mofo I was 20 minutes ago, and I get like, oh, I'm like 7 pounds lighter or 7 pounds heavier within 20 minutes and I haven't done anything. What the shit is that? That's not reliable. That's not, I don't want to use that bathroom scale. That's not what I want. And then imagine on the reverse of that, if your bathroom scale doesn't have good validity, maybe you step on it and you expect to see pounds or kilograms or however you set up your bathroom scale, whatever, metric, whichever weight system you choose to use. But instead of looking and seeing pounds or some measure of weight, you're seeing something like, oh, your heart rate is, such and such a heart rate. This is a bathroom scale. I want my weight, damn it. I want it to measure what I'm intending it to measure. Now, you might have a bathroom scale that also takes your heart rate or something, but for fuck's sakes, I want to know how much I weigh too. That's why I bought the thing. So you want to make sure that it's consistent where, there's not some drastic changes from 1 minute to the next where you take a toe off and suddenly you've gained 72 pounds. That wouldn't be reliable. I can't depend on this to give me accurate results. And then you also want to make sure that it's freaking measuring weight. Same thing with surveys. Think of it like a bathroom scale. Is it consistent over time, and is it measuring what you think it measures? When you step on the metaphorical scale of your survey, is it accurate? Is it consistent over the course of time, or does it change from minute to minute, hour to hour, minute after minute, hour after hour? Gangster's paradise. But anyway, is it changing at a nonsensical basis? And is it measuring what you want it to measure? Is your survey scale giving you pounds like you want it to on your bathroom scale? Or is it giving you heart rate and, how great you looked? Although that might be nice if a scale told you look great today. Or is it telling you, the next the next games that are going to be coming on Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. I don't need that information when I'm trying to get my weight. I mean, thanks, it's good to know, but that's not a measure of weight, dude. So just keep that in mind. So as per usual, if you have any questions or need any clarifications on this material, don't hesitate to come to my office hours or shoot me an email or a Canvas inbox message. I'm more than willing to respond. But that is all I have for you today. So I hope you have a good rest of your day, and don't forget to like and subscribe.